I can't hear you.
Well, it's horrible when the guest has to remind the host, "Hey, unmute."
At least I have a job today, right?
I think it's the second live I've done where I forgot to unmute myself.
Details.
All right, we'll try this again. Welcome to another live stream of the Me Plus Ultra Network, where we dive deep into the strategies, the mindset, and the insights that drive high-level business success. I'm your host, Scott Joseph, and today we're tackling the 5 most critical questions that every business must answer. These are questions that can define your company's success, direction, and long-term impact. These questions come from Peter Drucker. He's legendary. And today's guest, John Traver. I'm going to call you a disciple, a student. I know you study this man because you and I have talked about him on several occasions.
Yeah.
But you're going to help us today peel back the layers and apply them in a way that's relevant to the people that are listening or watching us today. So, John, you've spent 30 plus years. I think you and I kind of on the same.
91.
Yeah, 91. 30 some odd years building, scaling, selling businesses. You've done that well before me. I just did my first one. So it's or sold my first was, so
fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. But including Traver Technologies, which you sold to ADP.
Yeah.
So leveled up to a bunch, very large organization, obviously. But your experience spans, entrepreneurship. Anybody that comes in contact with you and starts talking business, it's very quick to recognize, in my opinion, that you're serious about it. You come with a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. And I could talk business with you for hours and never get bored because I just feel like you're spot on with just about everything you say. So, whether it's, I view you as innovative. I love your questioning skills. I think that's one of probably your superpowers, which I think is probably one of the most important things that a business leader can have. So love talking with you. I think the audience is going to love what we've got going on today. They should learn a lot by the end of this live stream. All right. People should have a concrete framework to evaluate their business, identify areas for growth, make smarter and more strategic decisions. So everybody tuning in, stick around. I do want to point out we're streaming live to LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and I feel like I'm forgetting one, YouTube. And
wow.
Of course, YouTube. That's probably the biggest one. All right, so YouTube. And so some feel free to throw in comments, questions along the way. We'll try and get them up, but not every place we're streaming to feeds back into live stream. So some will get on air, some we won't. If we don't get it on air, we'll try and go back online, either John or myself, and answer your questions online if we can after the show. So John Traver, welcome to the Me Plus Ultra Network, man. Thanks for showing up.
Scott Joseph, you're a gift to so many. This guy is a connector. It's like you can have all the conduit in the world, but without those couplers, it's only so long. This guy is, first of all, he's passionate about connecting, and he's great at it. He's got a good eye for what goes together. And it's okay. I mean, it's just one of those things that you can smile and nod because you do a great job of it. Watching this thing evolve from the 4 boxes, right, into what it is today, and then watching who's in the room. I would just say, if you're running with Scott Joseph, stick around. It just has a way of morphing, and that's an earned compliment, buddy. So thanks for having us today.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit. If there's some people out there that don't know who you are, let's talk a little bit. Introduce yourself to everybody here. Kind of go through some of the milestones. In other words, what I'm really curious about, right, is kind of what led you to feel like, hey, this is the topic we need to discuss. So what were some of those milestones along the way where you were introduced to Peter Drucker, but more importantly, taking some of what you learned from that, applying to your own stuff and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. So kind of a segue is what you're asking for, Scott.
Make my job easy, John.
Yeah. I'm going to make your job easy. Gosh, if Sandy Sarami were here, we would go in the ditch real quick. Well, it's been a fun journey, building multiple companies, a lot of grace. First of all, let me say, I'm not Stanford educated. I did not graduate top of my class. I'm gifted in however God has gifted me, and I've tried to use those things. I've screwed up plenty of times. And I hopefully have learned from some of those things. But I think the journey for me, building multiple companies, was fortunate to sell to a Fortune 300 ADP. At that time, ADP was, I think, one of 6 AAA rated stocks traded in year 2000. So it was unique. And then I have another business that, ironically, it's in agriculture, and we partner with a Fortune 300 today through the agricultural play, Tractor Supply Company. And why do I mention that? It's weird because, like, those are giants, and I'm just this little guy, with these sub $100 million companies, but these companies are making meaningful difference in their space, and their capacity is massive. We don't typically start out with this huge idea in terms of market cap, things like this. We're really we're looking to play a role in a space. I think early on, Scott, my focus was more youthful. It was hustle. It was spotting opportunities, assembling teams, getting things off the ground, right? Yep. You remember at J&L, same thing. I think at that time, Scott, and you'd probably say the same, I thrived on entrepreneurial adrenaline, basically, right?
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
And look how quick he affirms that. I mean, it's just a thing early on. So if you're a young entrepreneur and you're listening, or in your early stage, you're filled with a lot of this helium, right? And that's cool. That's a great place to start. But I think after a while, you asked the segue, I started noticing patterns. Why some businesses soared, why others stalled. Wow, gosh, I thought that was a great business. What happened, right? What separated the ones from lasted from the ones that didn't? I didn't want the music to stop and be standing on the floor. And the reason was I didn't want to let the people down around me that were counting on me. So I think that's when I started leaning into strategy, Scott, leaning into leadership more deliberately. And it wasn't this overnight, inflection point that happened for me one day. It was more like this gradual awakening. I think wisdom was sort of set in my lap. And in other words, yearning to, hey, Traver, like my own voice in my head. Hey, Traver, have you thought this through? Have you thought about, what's the longevity of this? Who are you affecting? How does this affect these people? Hey, where is it? And those questions were sort of flying through my brain. And I think, Scott, that's where Peter Drucker's influence came in for me. And I've read a lot of Drucker stuff. And I'll just, for those that don't know Peter Drucker, he's kind of known as the godfather of big business. He's deceased now. He lived into his 90s. Global big businesses. General Motors hired him. But this guy had a knack for just right down to like getting it down to the brass tacks. And it was just chock full of wisdom. And so I love that because I could take that and add water and I could sell lemonade, kind of based on the idea or the principle. So he had one book he did that was sort of, I feel like it was the underpinning of most of his work. And it was 5 questions every business has got to ask. And I would add to that subtitle, and you should keep asking. And that's when you and I talked about doing this one, I was like, brother, we're going to do Drucker's 5. It'll be the beginning of 25. Everybody's already set sail on their year. But here's the thing. Here's my question for those that are out here on the water. Where are you going? Not what do you want to do? Where are you headed? And why are you headed there? And I want to show you that if you ask these questions, and as the mafia says, I'm going to use the mafia version of peel the onion. We're going to peel the onion. We're going to peel the onion. It's a little painful when you start peeling the onion. But as you get into the core, brother, it's like, whoa, hold on a second. We need to rethink this. So that would be my answer for you. I stopped chasing the next deal. I started obsessing, I think, over how to create value that lasts. That's probably it. Hey, Russ Hill, good to see you, brother.
What's up, Russ? So let's go into that with these 5 questions. Why are they so relevant today? Because you said ask them and then keep asking them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, what are the questions? Number one. Number two, why are they relevant today? I would challenge the audience to tell me if they can think of a time where they might not ever be relevant. So, maybe you guys can find a time. I haven't found that time yet. So the 5 questions are very simple. They're kind of what, where's, how's. So it's what is our mission? Okay. Now, if you don't understand what a mission is in business, which we'll talk about today, you might answer that question without a whole lot of pop. Okay. So you really want to understand what a mission is in business. And it's different than what some people think. So what is our mission? That's number one. Number two, see, by the way, everybody wants a plan. Everybody has a plan. This is what we're going to do. These 4 questions come before question 5, which is what is our plan? That's question 5. But there's 4 questions that come before it. What is our mission? Number 2, who's our customer? I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how to identify a customer today, because you have more than one. And once you understand that, then I'm going to ask you a few questions about that customer and how you're lined up with those customers, those types. Number 3 is, what does the customer value? And I love that because it needs to be revisited. I mean, Scott, how much has changed in retail, in purchasing? And I mean, everything continues to evolve, right? When you write a check, some might look at you as, a relic, right? A check. I do everything electronic, right? So everything.
Jamil looks at me as like a relic.
Bro, I just reloaded some checks from PNC Bank, man. There are guys that come to the house I write a check for, hey, that's how it is. So tell Jamil he needs to be kind to his elders, okay?
That's what I tried to tell. He comes at me with this work ethic, which I've never, I mean, you gotta, I mean, it's pretty impressive. I will say that. And he comes at me and he compares and he competes with me on the work ethic. And I said, Jamil, I'm going on 60. I always round up. I'm going on 60 years old. I said, what's it say that your biggest rival is a 60-year-old man? I mean, my God.
Is he working on an answer for that right now?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got, what's our mission? Who's our customer? What is our customer value? How are we doing is question 4. And then question 5 is, what's our plan? And so, Scott, those are the big 5. Why are they still relevant today? Because they're guidance systems. They test your mettle as an organization because they align your organization. Who wants to go out there and do it on their own? Right? We do this, it takes a village, right? Kind of vibe. Yeah. And so the answer to that question is, these 5 are your friends, and they'll create clarity. And with clarity, you have speed. With speed, you have measurables. And now we're putting points on the board. And people are like, how the heck is Joseph doing this? Well, they're aligned. And they've answered those big 5, and they always go back to the basics. What did Lombardi say? The famous quote, gentlemen, this is a football. Did you guys know that most people think like that was his first day in Green Bay, and that is false. He had been there 2 full seasons, and they had been a losing team before he got there for a long time, since Curly Lambeau. But the 3rd year, they made it to the NFC Championship game. Basically, it was the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. They were leading in the 4th quarter, Scott. They were winning, and they lost that game. And it ate his lunch. And that was 1965. And he was like, you know what? That was just a couple of years before you were born, by the way. And year before I was born. So neither of us were even born yet. But it ate his lunch. And he's like, I'm going to be ready for these guys. And when they showed up in this training camp in July that next year in 66, they were going to win their first championship. And he said, gentlemen, this is a football. And what he meant to say is, we're going back to the basics. Yeah. And that's kind of what the big 5 are. These will never let you down. I promise you. For me, my only regret that I didn't incorporate them earlier.
Listen, what do you get? These are 5. I'm going to call them simple questions.
Yeah, very.
But I think I know your answer to what I'm about to ask. what would you say the percentage, if you were to put 100 business owners and or, C-suite executives in a room, and you were to ask them, what is our mission? Who is your customer? Because I've asked, like, who's your customer? And I'm blown away. What's your avatar look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many do you have? What do they look like? And some people don't even understand what that means. And they have a really hard time describing that. What percentage would you say can easily, right off the top of their head, answer these questions?
It depends on what group. Are we going to BB and C? And I would say most of the room. And now let's think about that. If I'm going to NADA and it's actually on the event, I'd say 2/3 of the room. If I'm going to a typical event, I would say less than half the room. And you say, well, what's the difference? One word: teachability.
Yeah.
Teachability. So to me, I think what makes an organization dangerous is that trait. When you're competing against people that are they desire to learn, they desire to innovate, they are that teachable, they ask good questions, brother, it's going to be a long day out here. You know what I mean? You're going to have to earn every yard, because those guys they're bringing it. I mean, they're just bringing it. And right. I like that, because we're in control of that decision. We get to make that decision. And so everybody listening, you can make that choice. Stay teachable. How do I stay teachable? Start out with some basic things. You don't know it all. I don't know it all. What else is there? Number two, what does this mean? What's happening? What does it mean? What does it mean right now? But what else could it mean? Remember the old Alan Kay quote from Microsoft I always talk about? The perspective is worth 80 points on the IQ. And that's that sort of, how do I get that? Well, stay flexible. And so there are some people that can pull off a very high degree of confidence, and yet they're still learning. But like, for the most part, you can sense when people are teachable. For me, I always use the Little League example. There were years, there was one year, brother, I was coaching 5 Little League teams at the same time. True story. And I told you I wasn't that smart. But we had a lot of fun, and I wanted to be present and be involved with my kids and what they were doing. And so I'm coaching cover defense at third base. And these are 9-year-olds, Scott, 9-year-olds. So what's my mission here? My mission is I want them to feel involved. I want them to feel trusted. I want them to grow, and I want them to have fun. Okay. And that doesn't mean we lost a bunch of games. We were very competitive. Okay. So what did I do? So at third base, when you call a bunt coverage, cover 3, I got a third baseman who's going to crash on somebody squaring up on a Little League ball field for a bunt. All right. So I would roll everybody to third base in this drill. I don't care if you were the big kid, the little kid, the kid that could barely throw a ball, the kid that was, he was A-Rod, at 9 years old, it didn't matter. Everybody's going to play third. But what I got to know about the kids is, there were kids that were afraid, and they would just go up there and they do it and they quick shuffle off. Yeah. And then there'd be the kids who'd be like this, like right here, coach, like right here. And Scott, I knew I could trust that kid. Yeah. It didn't even matter if he was good. You know why? Because he asked. Yeah. He asked. I know that kid wanted to be coached. And so I would tell, I'd always grab a dad or two and I would say, so to me, it's the same thing in business. I mean, those that they want answers, they're going to ask. That's a simple word. ASK. Use it often. Ask.
Well, let's start peeling back the onion. Let's go one by one. So okay. Question number 1, right? What is our mission? Well, I was going to ask, why is that so important? And then where do businesses kind of, get it wrong?
Yeah. So let's define mission first. Okay. So I'm gonna give you 2 scenarios, right? So if you and I were in the military, a mission is what? Traver, Joseph, secure that building. It's a what? Secure that hill, like that. That's what a mission is. So the first mistake made in this space is people think mission is what? Oh, we want to be at blank market share by end of year. It's not what a mission is. Mission is why. Do you remember there was a t-shirt with an apple that had a bite out of it, and it had two words. It said, think different. What company was that?
Yeah.
That was Apple. That was their mission. The cool thing about missions, it was everything they built, everything they designed was built around we think different. Different in what? Different than most IT and product development companies. We think like you. We think how you're going to use our tools. Got it? And so we don't want you to adapt. We want to adapt to you. We think different. There's a couple rules for your mission. Number one, it should fit on a t-shirt. So it's not Moby Dick. It's not War and Peace. Hey, turn around so I can read the rest of your mission. I'm no, it's got to be that. So everybody knows. So like at Traver Connect and XPS Solutions, two companies here, they both use the exact same mission because they sort of do similar things in different industries. They're completely separate companies, separate leadership teams, C-suite, all that. But it's experience matters. And the subset is theirs, yours, ours. So like at Traver, experience matters. What does that mean? Are we bragging about ourselves? Actually not. We start out with theirs. Who's theirs? The consumer. Their experience matters. So we build out answers to problems that they experience where we can make that experience matter more to them. We want to eliminate friction for them. We want to simplify for them. That may be a texting platform. Yes, it could be taking calls. It could be building out SaaS software that goes in a dealership. It could be providing learning and development type tracks here for leadership teams in dealerships. I'm giving you some quick ones, but it guides our thinking in terms of what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. So that's theirs. Yours is the client. So their experience matters. How can we make it matter? Number one, whatever we do, we should be able to do it at least as good as they do or better than what they already have. And we should be able to do it for less. The idea is in scale, I should be able to save them money through what we do. So that's the second part. And the third is ours. Theirs, yours, ours. Experience matters. Theirs, yours, ours. Ours is, well, how the heck are we going to do this? You and me are going to get together? No, we're going to need people that are, first of all, passionate about making experience matter. We're going to need the right people in the right seat. We're going to need people that think that way, that are equipped that way, that know how to solve those problems or write that code. Got it? And so very simple. And so that is a clear example of mission. At the ranch, Scott, we're contributing meaningfully to the protein cycle. So we started out, we were in cattle first. And we got up to 450 head. That's another story, another podcast, another day. One of these days, you're going to come down here. I'm just going to take you out. We're going to go.
That'd be awesome.
Okay. But we went like this with cattle, and then we began to produce hay. And I'll stay on track here. And the hay basically superseded the cattle, and the hay business grew very big. And now we're coming back with cattle, and we still have hay. And so, but the bottom line is, let me ask you, cattle contributes to the protein cycle, right? Because it's beef. Okay, yep. So what do cattle eat? They eat forage. What is forage? Hay.
Yeah.
So we're still in the cycle. We didn't venture off into windmills. Does that make sense? We're still meaningfully contributing to the protein cycle. We think within 18 months, we'll feed over 300 families in North Texas with the Third Day Bee Farm that's growing now. And we're really excited about that. So, and this is something we've done for years, but now it's about to get some emphasis. And so my point is the guiding mission guides us to where, like, you looked at that idea right now, I watched your body language shift because not just because of the beef and the families, but you're like, wait a minute, it's still true to the mission. Correct. So why? And so this is, look, let me give you a few things to think about. If you ask, well, if you're in a dealership, if Mike Porrell's watching today, I would say to Michael, I'd say, what's your mission at the dealership today? And Michael could answer us. And then I'd say, are you satisfied with this as a mission? Which is a nice way of saying you do understand you reserve the right to adjust your mission. Okay. So just because it's good doesn't mean it can't evolve. Another question I would ask him, I would say, would you say the staff knows this as the mission? I would then say, okay, good. Are they engaged in the mission. To know it versus engaged, those are two different things. And then I would say, okay, I'm going to ask you this one. What changes are needed in your mission? So when you choose your path, like in automotive, Scott, you essentially have two paths. If you're retailing vehicles, you're going to choose three. I'm just going to sell cars. I'm going to sell my way through the P&L. Okay. Two would be I'm going to sell and I'm going to have some retention programs. And three would be I'm going to sell, but I'm going to create a loyalty experience that causes people to not think of anybody else. And even if they didn't want to buy the product I got, they will anyway, because we pick up and deliver their car for service. We do this, we do that. And they really can't find it anywhere else. Those are all choices that tie back to a mission. They're not the same thing. Retention and loyalty are not the same thing. Yeah, they're related, but they're not the same. So I'll stop there because it looks like you got a question.
Well, I was going to go on to
what is our mission.
No, listen. I like the way you simplified it and keep the focus. I go back. My mind starts thinking about J&L. What did we do when we were right and did the right things? Yeah, we stayed true to what we were doing, right? And that was just early on, before we got into the back end and fixed ops and stuff like that. It was all about selling cars. And so as we started, our mission changed at some point, because we realized, wait a minute, we're very good in fixed ops just as well as we are on the front end. And so it can't be all about selling cars. It's got to be more about making it easier for a dealership to be more profitable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that changed at one point. But when we made mistakes, regardless if it was that or just the front end of the store, is when we started to try and do things because we thought, oh, this would be something we could sell. This is something we tried to be we start trying to be everything to everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, that's it. You nailed it. So what's the takeaway for the audience? It's start with your mission. What is our mission? I want to be candid with you guys. When I bought XPS in 2004, I didn't have that mission. When I started Traver Connect in 2011, I didn't have that mission. But you pursue it and you refine it, and and what I want to tell you is this. Listen to me. Please trust me on this. When it clicks, you have an unfair advantage.
Yep.
So stay at those questions. It will click. You will get it down to the brass tacks. I remember rolling that out for one of my companies. I gave them all the hints. It was like Wheel of Fortune, and I filled out almost every single blank. Vanna White spun, bought them the vowels, the whole deal, and they still picked something else that was War and Peace. And I was like, yeah, no. Okay. And so the first half of the year when they were journeying with it, I could tell it was like knuckles dragging through the dirt. They just didn't believe. And then the lights started coming. So this is leadership, but then they started seeing it, and they'll tell you, and today I can't keep up with them. I mean, they are banshees, and they have added to why experience matters and their own ideas, et cetera. They get it. So my point is, it's worth fighting for. You say, I don't have to have a mission to be in business. You got me there. But if you want to be great, you want to be in this game for a long time, you want to be sustainable, you want to have a clear direction and be able to make decisions with sort of a nimble superpower, then question number one, what is our mission, will be your friend.
Well, and I know that as we ask the remaining 4 questions, they're going to add and feed into that. But before we get there, so many business leaders, it's so easy to say yes to everything. And it can be harder to say no. And when you know what your mission is and you're focused in on it, it makes it much easier. And by the way, this isn't just, I would say this is great advice, not just in business, but in your personal life. I've got a personal mission statement. And until I had that, I just wanted to say yes to everybody. Until I had that and realized this does not align with my personal mission statement, I can't go forward with it. And I just, started saying no. And night and day difference. So it allows you to stay laser focused on what's most important.
Yesterday was the anniversary of one of my dear friends passing 3 years ago, Steve Farrar, Dr. Steve Farrar, men's ministry, wrote Point Man. He wrote 20 books. Steve was a really close friend, and I'm still close with their family here in Dallas. But we go back years and done some men's events and stuff together. But Steve, you would have loved Steve, and a man's man. And he's like, he kind of like this, and like if he's sitting there delivering a message, he had this way of, I always say, I felt like I'm losing by 20 at halftime, and he's my head coach. It's like I'm getting my butt chewed, but it seemed right. You know what I mean? It just felt right. And
Yeah.
Steve had that ability. He could hit the buttons just right. Anyway, he told me, he goes, yeah, these guys are going, and this is back in like late 90s, early 2000s. These guys are paying, $5,000. They go to a weekend and they get their personal mission statement. And he goes, I can't afford that. He said, so I did mine at the kitchen table the other weekend. He goes, you guys got something to write with? He goes, let me give it to you. He goes, you ready? And, we're all, 5,000 guys in this event, right?
Yeah.
You ready? Don't screw up. That's it. And that stayed with me my whole life, and I'm just kind of like, that was Steve's. But you talked about this morning, I'm in with one of our chief operating officers for one of the businesses here. We're having a conversation on an expansion area of the business. This ties back to what you just said a second ago. And the conversation was, hey, what if we add flux capacitor to what we're doing? And I said, let me ask you this. How does that fit under the mission? And the answer was, I don't think so. See how quick that is?
But see, you're very
I asked
good.
the
This goes
question.
right back. Yes, you're very good. Rather than saying, no, that doesn't do this, when you ask that question, right, and they answer it, it's more true for them. If you just said that doesn't fit our mission, that doesn't, they may not buy into it. When they say it, it's true. It's more real. And so I love that you did that. It's just it's a very simple example of your questioning skills. I know that's a very basic question, but it's on autopilot for you to ask questions.
Can I tell you why? Because it's powered by one of three values that we all embrace here. And that's value number 3. And that is, we think and act like owners. All of us own this thing. That organism in the middle of the table called our company, that's why we're gathered here. That thing, its job is to put a roof over our heads, to make sure the check's clear, to allow us to advance, to impact. But to whatever the best idea is, that's the idea we use. Not John's idea, not Scott's idea, not Jen's idea, not Bob's idea, not Joe's idea, not Andy's idea, best idea. And we could care less because we don't hand out awards for best idea. We just hand out awards for the organism growing and being protected. And we all have it 6. And the way we have it 6 is we focus on thinking like owners. Good to Great, Jim Collins, when he asked those questions, if anybody really understands that book, I'll talk about it in a minute here when we get to how are we doing. But, he does say that the very first thing they found in all those companies that ended up in that study was they had associates who thought and acted like owners. That culture is, you want to talk about uber unfair advantage? That's huge. By the way, if you're an employee in a business and you think and act like owners, like you see trash and pick it up. Our big values here, Scott, they're very simple. Number 1, can-do attitude. Can-do attitude. Can-do means, it doesn't start with no. It starts with, okay, let me figure out how we could do that. Can-do.
Yes.
And what's great about can-do is it fosters collaboration. It fosters innovation. We don't want somebody, I'm just going to say it the way I say it internally, peeing in our Wheaties. You're stopping. The whole idea is to be able for me to come to you and say, okay, riddle me this. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. Okay, hey, tell me more. What caused this idea? Do we have a problem that you got? Whatever. But interesting. And then we run on EOS here, so we quarterly stack our rocks. So it's not like, hey, let's stop everything we're doing. We already have rocks for this quarter, but let's put it in the queue. Unless it's emergency stuff, somebody's bleeding out, we're going to stop the bleeding. But it has its order. So can-do attitude. Number 2 is relentless pursuit of results because we care. And we know we want to be result-oriented, but we want to know the reason is because you show up, you care. So if we promise you 50 appointments in a campaign and 1,000 records usually produces 75 appointments, and we do 1,000 records worth of work and it only produces 25, what's unacceptable here is Well, I did 1,000. No, 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 no. We didn't get to 50. So we need to figure out. So let's eat it. Let's figure out, let's get to 50. And then let's talk and go back to said client and say, hey, your list is horrible. We got you to 50. We had to go through 2,600 records to get to 50. So now, if you're our partner, what are you thinking? Well, first of all, I want to work with these guys.
That's right.
Because they didn't put my problem in my lap. They ate it, but now they're showing me. So that's value number 2. And value number 3 is we think and act like owners. So those values guide our mission. So when I go to Jen, in this case this morning, and that conversation happened, it was super easy. I just like, does it fit under our mission? And because I honestly want to stay open. Maybe it does. I just couldn't see it. And she's like, not really. She said, here's what I'm thinking we'll do. We'll have a coordinator that can do this, and then we'll use an outsourced company to do that. And it was relative to a part of that industry. It has a lot of moving parts, and you're now sort of getting away from what we really are here to do today. So it's guiding. Okay. So that's one. What is our mission?
This is what I was saying. I could talk to you for hours because we'll go down
rabbit holes.
We'll go down them, and I'm horrible with that, right? Because my attention span is like all over. But I thought this was important, so I wanted to keep it going with this because you brought up ownership mentality. You can't get there without asking questions. If you're not asking these questions and you're just telling everybody this is what it is, no one has ownership. So I love what you do on that. And then you brought up the customer stuff, and I want to go into that. So let's go into question number 2, right?
Yep.
Who is our customer?
Okay.
And so, like, why do you think businesses struggle with that? In trying, or the mistakes they make in identifying who their real customer is.
So let's remember,
or customers are, because it's multiple.
Yep. You got 2 types of, remember, we're doing this is Peter Drucker's work, his observations, decades of work, thousands of companies. So we're looking through his eyes, and we're asking the question constantly, do these questions, are they still relevant? Right? Like you said earlier in the podcast. So I submitted, I believe they are, unless somebody can show me they're not. So how does Drucker define this? Who is our customer? He says, you don't have one, you have 2. You ready? Number 1 is primary customer. Number 2 is secondary. Primary, secondary. 2 types of customers every business has. Let me explain. Let's go outside of our current industry. Let's pretend we're all elementary school principals. God bless school in our teachers and education system. That's a challenging job. The elementary school principal. So let's apply this rule. Does an elementary school, you don't think of them as having customers. Who's their primary? Let's see. Who's their primary customer, Scott? Take a guess. Elementary school, you're teaching, 1st through 5th grade, whatever. Who's the primary customer in the school?
Well, I would narrow it down to one of 2 things. I would assume it has to be one of these. Well, it could be 3. I'm going to say 3, and I know I'm going to get one of them. So I'm going to cheat.
Come on. I love it. He's on the hot seat. The guy that created the hot seat is on the hot seat.
It has to either be the student, the teacher, or the parent.
Good. It is the student. That's why you gathered the classroom.
I thought you were asking me a trick question.
No, no. But let's bifurcate now. Let me ask you this. So the student, how many of you guys would agree that are listening? The student is the primary customer here. The school exists for who? For the child, right? Okay. So identify your primary customer. Okay, that's 1. 2 is Scott named 2 secondary customers. He said teachers and parents. But let me add to your list. You ready? School board, teachers union, local businesses, administrative staff like office admin, facilities, janitorial, grounds, other. There's 7 secondary customers. Now, I have a question for you. Could any one of those secondary customers get that elementary school principal fired? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Depending on what they want to say.
They could cost them their job, right?
Yeah.
So if you're running a dealership, primary customer is the consumer.
That's right.
But the secondary customers, And so what you'll find is when we talk about customer or client, some, have moved to that language. Michael does, right? Client. But we know what we're talking about. We're talking about the consumer side. Okay, primary, secondary. And what you'll find is the needs are different. And so like in automotive, it could be the OEM. You just sold a store, right? Could be the OEM. And they have a say in the buy sell, don't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thought it was your deal, right? The bank,
Yep. Oh yeah.
the lawyers. If you didn't own the dirt,
We put the lawyers down as a third
category. Hey, a good one's worth the money, but yes, but yes. So who is our customer is real simple. It's primary, secondary, and learn to identify the two. And that leads you into question 3, which is what is the customer value? And this question you want to ask perpetually. Listen close. Listen close. I think the questions allow us to make the adjustments. So, what's the old saying? Leadership is knowing what to do next. It's knowing why that's so important. And it's knowing how to bring the right resources to bear for the need, right? Knowing what to do next, knowing why that's important, and knowing how to bring the right resources to bear. So when you are working with your customers, and I think these are just core ideas, is, ask your customers stuff like this. Scott, thanks again for the business. Just big picture question. In your opinion, what should we be working on to improve as it relates to your experience with us? Now, what I love about asking it that way is it's not dead-ended. Like, what could we have done better? That's like me saying I failed. Yeah. By me changing the way I asked it, it's more forward thinking. It basically implies you've received an acceptable experience, but I want to tell you that we're in pursuit of improving always. And I'm curious through your eyes, I respect your opinion. It says like 7 different things. So what should we be working on to improve as it relates to your experience with us? So that's one. Another one is, and you could just back this up, but it would be, what would be ideal for you in this situation? What would have been ideal, or next time? What would be ideal? And I love ideal because it's white paper. I mean, sometimes you get stuff that is just gold because you just took all the chains off. And then another one is just sometimes just boiling it down to the main thing, because everybody's sort of bloated with so much going on, is in its essence, in a sentence, Scott, what do we need to accomplish for you? That's a great sort of way to work your way through an issue. Another one is this the right timing, or would there be a better time? A lot of people just say, is this a good time? And it's kind of dead-ended. Leadership team, I would say when you're trying to learn more about the customer, I would say, what needs are we concerned about that we're uniquely qualified to meet? What needs are we concerned about that we're uniquely qualified to meet? Sometimes what you'll hear is, well, boss, seriously, if we had more fleet vehicles, I could answer that, but okay, so if we had fleet vehicles, then tell me what what are you concerned about? Yeah. And he may begin to speak about loyalty, or she may begin to speak about retention. Why are we doing what we're doing? Just why are we doing it this way? Scott, you told me about the journey from, snail mail to digital with J&L. That's right. And you basically inherently had to ask that, why are we doing what we're doing? You asked that question, whether you know it or not, it happened, right? Yeah. If we could only accomplish 3 measurable goals or priorities in the next 5 years, in the next 6 months, in the next 18 months, that would give us a distinct advantage? Or what objective, if we accomplish it in the next 3 to 6 months, would give us a huge advantage within the next 12 to 24 months? What would that thing be? Or are we achieving the quality we expect and demand?
And when you're going through some of these, what you're doing now is like, all right, I've got all these issues. I've got to accomplish this, right? I've got a goal. I've got a mission I want to do. Here's my situation, though. I've got this barrier, this challenge, this issue. And you start writing out potential, issues and challenges. And when you're going through, it's like, all right, which ones if I attack now, 3, 6 months, what's great about some of those eliminate some of the other challenges. In other words, if we do this, one reason we want to prioritize this, right, is because if we're able to do this, this other issue kind of becomes irrelevant, and so there's this dynamic of, and you're focusing on your internal team at this point, in these secondary customers with some of these questions on what, well, but you're also using these questions to come up with probably new processes, new services, new products that will make the client experience better too.
One comment I want to make about your soundbite right there is the word prioritization sort of embodied what you just talked about, right? And Scott, for me, one of the things, if you said, John, what do you look for in leaders that's like a very important trait, I would say their ability to prioritize. A leader who can properly prioritize is worth 3x. And so because everything's important, and if that's true, then nothing's important. But somebody who can look at everything and go, it's all getting done one at a time. And the big rock is going first.
I started Jay and I was 22.
Yeah.
When I started.
Yeah.
For the first 10 years, I had a great team, and they used to have a running joke on me. So that joke was, hey, we've got this, and this. And Scott, this is a top priority? Yes. Everything was a top priority. Yeah. I used to say, and they hated it. And I look back, and I was joking when I said it, but I said, hey, load the mule. No, I said, load the wagon. Don't worry about the load the wagon. Don't worry about the mule. All right. We'll figure it out.
It's hard. But so that's part of being an entrepreneur though, too, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
The vision piece.
Like you don't. And then all of a sudden, as you grow and you start scaling, that's when you start realizing everything can't be a top priority, or you don't get anything done.
Yeah.
So, and you start to stagnate, to start to plateau a little bit. Let's move on to the third question.
Fourth. That was third. What is the customer value?
Yeah.
What is our mission? Who's our customer? Right. What do they value?
And what you train. So let's move into the fourth one. What are our results?
Nope. So, how are we doing? How are we doing comes before results. 5 is what's our plan? How are we doing? Yeah, results. That's probably an okay way to say it too. How are we doing though is better because it makes them look at how they're going about it. Okay, let me just say this. Do you remember we just had an election last fall? So I'm going to use an election as an example. In 1991, there's a guy named Ross Perot that ran for president of the United States. You remember? And it was Bill Clinton, Ross Perot, and Daddy Bush, with Quayle. And so anyway, Clinton wins, but Ross Perot, he was a Dallas guy, and he talked like this, and he had charts and graphs, and he used phrases like giant sucking sound, talking about money being spent. Okay, so he was and he bought commercials like half hour, and he did these sessions on TV. It was like out of the box. He's on national TV, and he's teaching the United States citizens how he's going to approach the problem like it is a business. Okay, listen, there's a reason I'm telling you this. He garnered 20% of the popular vote. He was independent. The last time that happened was Teddy Roosevelt, who became president. And so, I mean, he garnered a lot of votes. So it was like he had this wind at his back, Scott. And then came the VP debate. And it was like, you didn't really know these people a whole lot. And that when his VP candidate was up there, his name was Admiral James Stockdale. And most people didn't really know who Stockdale was. Stockdale, so I'm watching this, and the screen moves from Dan Quayle to him. And what I noticed was Gore and Quayle respected Stockdale. So I knew he had some gravitas, okay? And he opens his mouth and loses the election with the first 2 statements. He goes, "Who am I? What am I doing here?" It was rhetorical. And I'm like, I know. I was like, uh-oh, that's a problem. Because elections are largely won typically, historically, by what they call a likability factor. You don't actually know these people. You perceive, right? And you choose, okay, all right. So anyway, so Stockdale, who was Stockdale? This is a very important part of how are we doing. Stockdale was the highest ranking military official ever to be taken as a prisoner of war captive. He was taken prisoner of war in the Vietnam War. He was in what they called the Hanoi Hilton, which was where John McCain was. They beat the crap out of this guy, and he was an admiral, like over a fleet. I mean, they had a guy. So Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, great business book. If you haven't read it, read it. Jim Collins interviews Stockdale years later. And the reason he interviewed him is because Stockdale made it out. And he was just this like, how did this guy do this? And there were guys that died brokenhearted that were captive. I mean, they didn't even die from the injuries as much as they did from a broken state.
Yeah.
And so his interview, he's like, Admiral, he's like, tell me how it is that you got out of there. And he said, I just faced the brutal truth. And that's part of how we are doing. If you're going to be able to answer this question, you have to be able to get to real truth, not lipstick truth, not kind of truth, not in the ball. Well, I kind of made a mistake truth, black and white truth. He said, I knew two, and Collins is like, what do you mean? He said, I knew two things were true every day. They're going to beat the double hockey sticks out of me, most likely. And I was getting out of here at some point. And he's like, what do you mean you knew you were getting out of there? And he's like, well, I just knew. And he's like, well, what about the other guys? Did they know? And he's like, well, maybe some did. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, most of those guys, he said, you knew by the weather, the temperature and the sun and the length of the day, what season it was. So they're in there for more than a year. And he said they would like set these milestones, like Christmas, for sure by Christmas. They'll come in, they'll do us, get us home, they'll come and go. And they would be, set back. And they'd set summer and think 4th of July. It'll be ceremonial. And he said it would only take a couple of those and those guys would die brokenhearted. And he said, but you? And he goes, but me? Because I knew I was getting out. So he was willing to face the with determination. My point is, when you have a mission, you know who your customer is, you know what they value, and you're willing to peel the onion back and go, how are we doing? What's broke?
Yeah.
Listen to me. You know what you want as a product? If you and I are going to a dog park today and we're selling your product, you won't be wearing a meat vest. You know what I'm saying? A meat vest. Okay? You want to be hanging a meat vest because you don't even have to open your mouth and people are buying. That's how you get to how we're doing. What's the return on what we're doing? How much do we impact that business? How much do we save? How much do we make them? Real talk. Get to
how
work.
do you what
So
what have you let me ask you this, John. What have you learned in the sense of aligning company culture into how we're doing or achieving results?
Well,
and what I mean by achieving results, right? I'm talking specifically about, you're saying, how are we doing, right? Well, in the end, it's about achieving the results. You're trying to measure, are we achieving the results that our customers want, align with the mission?
Twist that a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to twist that a little bit if you'll let me. How 100%. Is your dealership? If it's a dealership, it's not a store, okay? And we're talking, Joe's in this conversation. You, me, and Joe. We're sitting here having this convo. Yeah. How's your dealership doing at delivering to your customer what they value? What do they value? Go back up to that question.
When I talk about achieving results, I'm talking about that as the measurement. Yeah.
That is not, we want to be at 10 million. We want to be at 1,000 retailed units. That's not it. It's what do they value? How are we doing? That's what you're measuring, because
that's right.
That is your guide to be able to achieve. So like you have Ina Company who's grown her social media footprint. We had this convo and I'm really excited about what she's doing. There's her mission is on target. I mean, she's basically, she was able to put it in a nutshell for me, and I'm going to use examples now so this can relate to people listening. But so Ina's not even from automotive. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know what Ina's mission is, and it's purposeful. I mean, it's powerful.
Oh yeah.
But she's like, John, there are people buying cars and they're servicing dealerships and they live on social. And she said, you have dealerships who don't understand social, or they pay somebody else to do it, and they have hardly any views, any likes. The ones they have are country. They're in the PMA actually translate into viewership, followship, and ultimately a transaction, right? A
Right.
relationship.
Yep.
And so she gets her hands in the dirt, and how she does that. And she's humble, she's hungry, she's lean in terms of overhead and how she's doing this. I like her chances. There's a young guy, Antonio Salas, who I met, Hardwood. The house is being remodeled. I love this young man and spend time with him. He's got a hardwood flooring business. And so he starts getting he's got his own team and vans and doing his thing, and nice homes in Highland Park here. I mean, he's killing it, Scott. And one of the things I told him, I said, listen, what I would do if I were you is to educate more on your social posts instead of, hey, we do hardwood floors. So instead, do the Joseph House and show the pull-up, show the vapor barrier, show the tongue and groove, show the herringbone, show the finish, and then have an interview with Scott of 4 seconds where he and Trish are standing in the living room going, we could eat off these floors. And guess what? He's doing exactly. So he's like part Ina, part him. But you know what he's doing? He's asking these 5 questions. And he tells me, he's like, John, he's like, there are other hardwood flooring guys that won't clean up. And you know what I know? Most customers get cranked off because guys leave such a mess at the house. So some of his posts are just them cleaning up. And I mean, they're down there with these little vacuum. Go ahead.
Let me give you a little story how I wish I knew this question. And I read a lot of books.
Okay.
Most of my business came from School of Hard Knocks and reading books. All right. And because this is right, we started pre-internet. So, and I just said this, I don't know if you saw the video in the Facebook, our private Facebook group with me plus Alter, not in the consortium, but when I first started J&L, all right, my knowledge was in sales. And so I built everything about, and indirectly I got lucky because I knew who our clients were. At that time, it was all car dealers, our primary clients, were all car dealers. And I knew my secondary, which was my focus on building the business, was my sales team.
Right.
And so I indirectly, my first priority was like, because I'm young and inexperienced, I'm thinking, I got to make this as easy as I can for these guys to be able to sell something. And so I started I lucked into creating packages and programs that were extremely valuable for clients because I knew if I could do that, it would be easier to sell. And I would then retain better salespeople and it would go from there, right? So long story short, 10, 15 years, we're tweaking the product, we're tweaking the programs, the packages and stuff like that. But the focus is all about, son of a bitch, we got a hell of a sales team here. I could make the argument that in our first 15 years, we were really a sales organization disguised as a marketing company.
Wow.
Now we're truly a marketing company, with some salespeople.
Yeah.
So as things are going, and the 3 things that really made us unique was our ability in our analytics on data, the marketing support, and the our marketing, or not our marketing support, our client support, and then our marketing strategy. But my focus is on how do I make sales better? How do I make sales better? How do I make sales better? Because that's what I knew. And that was what was successful up to that point for me. But to your point, all that enthusiasm, all that adrenaline, that gets you so far, but it only gets you there. So enter in Jamil. He's starting to take on the president role, and now he's CEO. And he's like, Scott, we had 30 some odd salespeople. He's like, what would happen if we shrank the sales team and took those resources and put it into marketing and support? And I thought, well, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard of, because I'm sitting here thinking the sales is what made us,
How we
right?
got here.
This is how we got here. This is a big risk.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wasn't paying attention to goes right to the heart of this question.
Mm-hmm. I see it.
How are we doing? And the reality we were doing very well, but not for the reason I thought. We were doing well because what our true, most loyal, and our best clients really loved was the support, was what we were doing on the data and the marketing strategy. So when Jamil came in, you know how many salespeople we have? We got 3.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to have the best year we've ever had. Not even close. We've
Mm-hmm.
grown over 300% in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took the resources and put it into areas where our clients valued things the most. And by the way, that's made it easier on our sales team to sell more with a lot less. And we all can do the math. Any business owner knows you can have 30 some odd salespeople. That doesn't mean you got 30 some odd good ones. So you've probably you've got 10 to 20% good ones, all right, or above average. Which other ones are costing you indirectly. You may not see it, but all those missed opportunities and burning through prospects and leads and just trying to manage all those people and all the headache and money that goes into building that. He took those resources and put it into more analysts, which a lot, and from a data standpoint, we were able to do that, how managing these digital accounts, into IT. And when I talk about IT, I'm talking about actual programmers and codes that improved our products and our services.
Yeah.
You've worked with Arno.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen, so.
I haven't, but team has. He's strong. Yeah. He's strong. Yeah.
And I would have never thought to go that, but if I was answering to your point, being brutally honest, our culture, I kept the culture from the culture and our business model from actually aligning to where our clients, what they eventually loved most about us. I thought we were good because we were a good sales organization. That wasn't accurate. I was wrong. And once I took the handcuffs off of him and he just got to go at it and do what he wanted to do. And to your point, if I'm measuring now, how are we doing? A hell of a lot better as it relates in our client. And I'm going by because we're doing things that our clients really love. Right. And by the way, that is trickled down to all the other things that are important to a business owner. Top line, bottom line.
I love the application and everything you just said. I've seen it firsthand in your organization. I've seen how powerful it is. So the question, if we're going to add value for those that are listening and watching this even later, how does it apply to them? What Scott and Jamil had that's required is trust. They had trust, and that cannot be understated. And what I mean by that is this is not a kumbaya. This is not where you come in. Oh, so what's not, how are we doing? Like I'm looking for drama. I'm not looking for drama. I'm looking for thinkers that are critical thinkers. Like, can I be honest with you? You better be. Yeah. Well, this sucks and we need to completely blow it up. Okay. What does it look like once it's put back together?
That's right.
Like that. So it's not this emotional conversation. It is a strategic conversation. And I do think that part of the job of a visionary, and you hear me say this once in a while, I always refer to Paul Revere. The British are coming, right? He's on the horse. He's telling everybody what's coming. That's our job. We have been given a God-given gift to see things before they happen in a unique way. Yes or no? Like you saw, there was an inflection point at J&L where you need to do this. You just sold a dealership. Something else you saw that, okay. So, hey, Russ, thank you, brother. So those things are very, very important, but it requires trust. And so just know that, and it's something you can give. And when you give it, you typically get it back. Can I wrap with this fifth one? Because this is
that's what I was going to say. They've got one more. Let's get to it.
All right. So the fifth, so we know we got, what is our mission? Who is our customer? What is our customer value? How are we doing? We peeled the onion back. So now we get to the question that most people start with, but they didn't ask those 4. Now you see why those 4 are so powerful. Now you say, what is our plan? And the key to this question, it's exciting because now you're going to focus on the right stuff, the right person, the right timing, the right direction, what's hurting or where there's opportunity. And all of a sudden it's like, how do these guys always square up the fastball? They always take us yard. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because they have this method. Now, I want to tell you something. Once you know your mission, you know the primary, secondary, all that stuff, you're ready for the plan. There about, I don't know, last year, Dynatron asked me to come talk at a mid-year meeting. And I love Kevin Smith, Lee Silver, Les Silver, and those guys they're kicking butt, taking names. They're really building a lot of value in the space. And so Kev asked me, we come speak at our mid-year sales meeting. They have 50 market presidents almost. Went to Chicago. We did. It was great. Had fun. But I was thinking about the message, as I was getting ready. And Dawn and I, it was a Saturday morning early. We're out on the back porch, and we have a little bit of acreage where we live here. And so we have a lot of activity. We have deer and all kinds of stuff. Okay, coyotes, but all these birds. And she put seed out. So my CFO, who's a dear friend, turned me on to this app that Cornell University created called the Merlin. I think it's called Merlin. Hold on, I'll tell you. It's Merlin. Just look it up, Merlin Bird app. It'll come up in your phone. Okay, so then you select your region. Okay, and so you just touch the record button. Scott, as they chirp, it'll start lighting up by species. So it knows indigenous in your area because you've selected your area, right? And it starts telling you, okay, now I know I kind of lost my man card here because you're like, Traver, you're actually listening to birds. Okay, and that's okay.
Not just birds, you're listening to them on that. You're
on an app. I'm listening to them on an app. But here's the thing. The bottom line is, if you ask good questions and you listen, the stuff that's been in your environment the whole time, all of a sudden, you have this distinct advantage to nail it. Yeah. That's why the 5 are so big, brother. It is your Merlin app.
Yeah. Man, how much time would people save on the plan if they just nailed the first 4 questions, honestly?
And people would run through walls to achieve it because they see it's not like, well, we'll give it a shot. They know all the why behind it. They vetted it. All the dots are connected before we even take the first step.
We've went a few minutes early or over, and I appreciate you giving us the extra time. I always kid people when we're at our business bourbon and cigars events. Here
we go.
I'm like, John, you've got a 5-minute intro up here. All right. And I only, what's funny about this is I have to overemphasize it to make sure that he stays within 8 to 9 minutes. But people make fun of me because they say I take up more time saying that than
That's what friends are for. The Dave Boyles, the Jamils, the Poros, they got my back. Like, Scott, when you're done with your 15-minute, be careful. Traver can talk for 3, Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
We have fun.
Incredible discussion. All right. So I wrote down some things about what we learned today. Obviously why everybody has got to answer these 5 questions. But how to define your mission and your customer and the importance of doing it early, right? Mm-hmm. How to align your company with your client culture, all right, or value, what they value, I should say. How to align your company culture with what they value, and then how to measure real success beyond just the normal measurables: revenue, top line, bottom line. To your point, how are we doing as it relates to, are we doing what the clients value most? And then how to create that plan that leads to lasting growth. Once again, like I said early on, business owner, true entrepreneur. Plenty of business owners that aren't entrepreneurs. So you're a true entrepreneur, clear leader. And these 5 questions are game changers. So I really appreciate you coming on here, sharing with everybody. That's another thing you give. You brought up Ina, and she considers you a mentor. We have another person in the space from Me Plus Ultra that also consider. And so I'm sitting there. I talk to these people because they're members, right? And I'm like, and your name always comes up with man, I just love working with John. He's kind of taken me under his wing and he's helped me. I could just name names, buddy. And to me, that is what makes this whole community a great thing. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about Me Plus Ultra, but you've got to surround yourself. And that's a whole nother podcast, surrounding yourself with the right people. All right. And associate with people that give with expect nothing in return. And that is you. And that's why God rewards you, my friend.
Grace upon grace, brother, for me. I mean, really just looking back, and a lot of people placed in my life that helped me, and I'm thankful. You see lemonade stand on the face of some of these people, and it gets me fired up. You know what I mean? It does. I do want to help them, and I can't do it for them, but I can lead them with questions. I can give them some insights. And it's memorable. I think when we're all done, that's what we're going to remember the most.
Yeah, that's right. People always throw around the word legacy. And I saw that recent Mike Tyson interview and it hit me because he's 100%. Listen, if we asked everybody in this audience today, give me the name of your great grandfather.
Right.
People would struggle with that.
Least out.
And that's just one generation in between. That's just one generation removed.
Yeah.
And I know they don't know the name of their great grandfather.
Right.
And so if you don't know that, there ain't nobody remembering us when it's all said and done with. So what can we do? Our real legacy isn't about us being remembered. I think it's about the impact that we might have, whether it's on a community or one person. And what's that ripple effect moving forward? Doesn't matter if you're remembered or not. That's just ego, right? It's just so the real legacy is the impact we have, I think, on somebody. And buddy, you make impact. So I really appreciate you and having you on here. And thank you for sharing the insights. Everybody out there, if you haven't had a chance yet, make sure you subscribe to Me Plus Ultra Network. You can do that on YouTube. You can also go to meplusultra.com and subscribe to us there. And that way you don't miss any of these episodes. So
highly
John,
recommend.
any last words? And what's the best way for people to reach you and get in touch with you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is easy, and I highly recommend Scott's Me Plus Ultra opportunity. Everyone's trying to get unstuck. Everybody's trying to move forward, get outside the box, get in a room full of people that are thinking outside the box. He's created a forum. Invest in yourself. Yeah.
It's always amazing. What I love about I have a big idea I'm working on, which by the way, you're probably going to get involved in. You don't know yet. So in a few weeks, you will.
Good.
This is an idea. If I had come up with it 5 years ago, I would have said somebody should invent this. But now, what's beautiful when you get into the right community, there's nothing that you're going to think about that at some point somebody hasn't already been there, done that, and had to navigate through it, right? And I think it's about taking all the lessons that took you and I, say, 30 some odd years to learn. The next guy why go through 30 years of that? Just learn it now and move on, right? Shorten the learning curve. So, man, I appreciate you. I know you got a busy day, so I'm going to cut us off here, and thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Till next time.
Yes.